Well, welcome to the report from Tiger Mountain, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to talk about the thing everybody's talking about the past week, which is the terrible tragedy at Bondi Beach and all its various ramifications. So stick around and listen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Pauline Hanson did warn us, didn't she? 30 years ago, she warned us that this was going to be happening. This was going to happen. She was one of the first populist new right people. Before Donald Trump, before Nigel Farage, there was Pauline Hanson. And she warned us about mass immigration, ladies and gentlemen. She warned us what would happen. And then a week ago on the beautiful sands of Bondi Beach, we saw exactly what would happen. We saw a couple of Muslim radicals open fire on on Bondi Beach, but particularly targeting a Hanukkah celebration put on by the Sydney Jewish community. Before we get into any details, it is a terrible tragedy. No one wants to see, anybody shut up this way, whether it be the Muslim community or the Jewish community. No one wants to see this, and particularly that it was, a young girl was caught in the crossfire and killed as well. So I'm going to give you my, interpretation of it all. I'll tell you a little bit about how I heard about it. I heard about it, like most people, on last Sunday night. I started getting messages saying that there'd been some kind of shooting at around 6:40, between 6:40 and 7:30. I started getting videos from people and stuff online. I think Beck Freedom posted the first ones I saw. And, there were, later that evening, there was almost a 10-minute video where you could see a large part of the shooting. They were on this bridge. I'm sure you've all seen the footage by now. They were definitely targeting this event, because there were other Aussies that were around that were filming them, and they didn't seem to be turning around and taking pot shots at other people. The only time they began to take pot shots in another direction were when the police were, coming at them, and began shooting at them. Now, there's been a lot of criticism apropos the police reaction. The bridge in question is a leisurely 4-minute stroll from the Bondi police station, so it is a bit strange why the police weren't on scene quicker, but I don't know, maybe they hesitate. Maybe apparently there were some female officers that were there first, and maybe they hesitated till the male officers arrived. I don't know exactly why. Is it a conspiracy? It's unusual. That's what I'm going to say about it. It's unusual. And then obviously there was that extraordinary footage of there was the older guys. It was a father-son Muslim speciality. The father went down to, get closer. And, there's this strange footage of him shooting at people at this festival. And there are a couple of people there who were wearing white shirts that were not, were not being hit at all. They didn't seem to be hiding. They were standing basically in the firing path of this guy with this automatic weapon, and they weren't hiding or anything. I don't know what the hell was going on. Now, that's another strange bit of footage that came out of the event. And then obviously there was that great hero who disarmed the attacker, and he took his gun off him. I mean, I don't know if it would have been me. I don't know if I would have had the guts to disarm someone like that, but if I had done it, I think I would have let him have it. And, the police are going to arrest me for shooting a terrorist. Well, they could do that later. But I don't think any court in the world would have charged that gentleman if he'd opened fire on him. And the reason it's a bit sad that he didn't, because the guy went back up on the bridge where he had another gun and he kept shooting, ladies and gentlemen. And I think the hero also got wounded. He's ended up in hospital. So, you've got both sides of politics, carrying on about all this. And Albo is like a rabbit in the headlights. He really doesn't know. He's not good in this situation, ladies and gentlemen. He blames the far right. Now, how is that possible? I mean, one thing that's ridiculous is in the weeks leading up to this, you see that he had, his government, the Labor government, had been essentially, they were terrorising essentially the radical right, the members of the National Socialist Network, people like this. They kicked that guy out to South Africa. They've arrested Joel Davis. They've been harassing Thomas Sewell. And then, you've also got someone like Damo, who's being hassled over, the gesture he made. This is what seemed to have been the focus of the Labor government, ladies and gentlemen, all the while that radical Muslim terrorism was clearly brewing beneath the surface. This is a real problem for this country. I mean, we've let in, countless amounts of, fighting age men into our countries. And, surprise, surprise, they're going to start fighting. I mean, that's the whole purpose of being here, ladies and gentlemen. And, I think this is probably only going to be just the beginning, sadly. And, you're probably going to see a lot more of this kind of thing. Now, I want to address the whole issue of the far right. It's complete nonsense. The far right, as far as I know, have never committed any kind of terrorist act, even on a small scale in this country. So the idea that there's some kind of threat is basically a fiction. It's nonsense. Clearly, the threat is coming from the Muslim community. But you've also got to remember that this is a reaction to what's been going on in Gaza. And this is, I think, the reason the terrorists were particularly focused on this Jewish event. Because, what Israel has been doing in Gaza, it is pretty fucking horrible. If you can imagine what happened in Bondi Beach, but maybe times like 10 or 100 on some days, that's every day in Gaza. You know what I mean? You got people being massacred, blown up, women and children. So, I have not been following every aspect of what's been going on in Palestine, but I do have some left-wing friends who post a lot of those videos. And, I'm on someone like Annie Lennox's page who posted some horrible stuff during, the past 2 years. Just babies coming out of, beheaded and, just absolutely horrific things that, the Jewish state of Israel has been committing quite happily. And every time they blow up a building with people in it, they go, oh, there's a tunnel under it, whether there's a tunnel under it or not. So, obviously this might actually upset a few Muslim people. And obviously it probably upset these two who committed this attack. So, you've got a conflict in the Middle East, which, of all the world's conflicts, that's clearly the one that's never going to end. It'll go on for another 1,000 years or until they wipe each other out, because both sides are completely fucked in the head, let's be perfectly honest. And then, what do you get from the Liberal Party? Oh, you got to battle anti-Semitism. I mean, that came from John Howard, came from Susan Ley. What a bunch of fucking bullshit. You know what I mean? Okay, that group was targeted and that was unfortunate. But this is really an attack upon Australia, ladies and gentlemen. People have every right to criticise Israel if they want to. And, we don't need to be brainwashed about Israel. We don't need to be brainwashed. People should better have all kinds of opinions about Israel and the Jewish community if they want. If they're not committing any crime, the far right, as I said, hasn't done anything, nothing. There's never committed one, as far as I know, and they've been in a couple of scuffles because the Antifa have attacked them. That's as far as I can see all they've done. So, this is a nonsense. And then, of course, we're going to get into the issue of, the false flag. Of course, that's been going around. Obviously, I'm somebody from, the conspiracy community. I have a lot of friends, David Thrussell, of course, he immediately began to send me stuff saying that it was most likely a false flag. And there is that guy, Ostrowski, I think his name is, and he'd been shot in the head. Now, I'll tell you what, if I'd been shot in the head, first thing I'd be doing is I'd be in hospital, right? You know what I mean? Because I've been shot in the head by a large caliber weapon, right? But it appears to have grazed him in the head. This is the story anyway. But no, he seems to have had some kind of triage done at the scene where blood is still all over his face. And, of course, even if someone had done that at the scene, they still would have chucked him straight in an ambulance because they were Russian people. The police were Russian people. Why was he not rushed to hospital? You got to notice this kind of thing because this is the kind of thing that gives it away, ladies and gentlemen. They oversource the pudding, all right? They put, and then this guy, of course, was a survivor of October 7. Now, somebody who has ChatGPT, which I don't, they put that in. What are the chances, they asked ChatGPT, what are the chances of being a survivor of both October 7 and the Bondi terrorist attack within 2 years? The odds are something like 1 trillion to 1, ladies and gentlemen. That's probably like winning Tats Lotto 3 or 4 times in a row each week. So that tells you, I think, something a bit strange might be going on there. These Muslim groups, let's say this. Does Muslim terrorism ever benefit Islam? Did September 11 help Muslim causes? No, it didn't. It did certainly help Israel, though, didn't it? And it certainly sent America into various wars in Iraq, Afghanistan. And there was Libya, Syria. So, you've got to ask the question, don't you, ladies and gentlemen? You've got to ask the question. I think with all these kind of events, you really have to ask who benefits, because the Jewish community now up in arms. They demand this, they demand that. You've got Bibi demanding this, Bibi demanding that. So, I don't know. I'm really 50-50 because it certainly could have been a false flag or it could have been organic. And I guess maybe it's just something unbelievable coincidence that this weird guy from Israel just happened to be there. But, I don't know. I don't know exactly. And I guess there's some ambiguity there we probably won't ever know. But it is just very, very strange. And it's fucked up. Obviously, I'm not saying, obviously the amount of people, the 15 people that have died, did die. I'm not trying to do a Alex Jones, Sandy Hook. Obviously, the people, you've just got to ask: is some of these Muslim terrorists, are they funded? Are they what they appear to be? Are they intelligence agencies? Are they CIA? Are they Mossad? Do they have Muslim families blackmailed in some way? Are these people forced sometimes? Are they brainwashed? Are they MK Ultra? You know what I mean? That's the question you got to ask. Obviously it was an attack on the group of people who are celebrating Hanukkah, but it's an attack upon Bondi Beach, ladies and gentlemen. That's the number one beach in Australia. That's as Australian a beach as you can possibly get. It's a national symbol. It's probably the most famous beach in the world, ladies and gentlemen. It is a really wonderful beach. I've been there, I don't know how many times. I must have been there 20 times. I've been swimming. I've walked across that very bridge 10 times to get down there. I love it there. Every time, I used to have my nightclub up in Sydney. I would go there and, I had friends who live in the area and it's a fun place. It had some nice bookshops and nice restaurants and had icebergs. Some of my wealthier friends might, take us to dinner at icebergs. It's all good. It's got that lovely swimming pool there, the open rock pool. It's an attack, upon our way of life, this whole thing. So, no matter who it is, it's an attack, whether it be a false flag from, nefarious intelligence agencies, who will be fairly obvious who they would be, or it is what it appears to be, which is an organic, radical Muslim attack upon a Jewish community. It's just a terrible situation, and it's not going to get any better. And neither side of politics, you got Labor crapping on about the far right, which is the far right had nothing to do with this. All the far right did was warn that something like this would happen, and of course it did. So Albo's completely lost. And of course there's going to be all these sweeping, changes to gun laws, to freedom of speech. I'm sure they want to try and bring in changes to freedom of speech. And then, then you've got the Liberal Party. All they care about is carrying on about anti-Semitism. And this is all on the wrong foot, ladies and gentlemen. The main problem here and the main issue is mass immigration. And anybody who doesn't like this country and is not into our way of life should be deported, particularly if they're here on a visa, but also even if they've been given citizenship in the last 35, 40 years and they really don't fit into our way of life. They should have their citizenship revoked, and they should be put very nicely onto a plane back to the country they once come from. And let's face it, we'll throw in free fucking movies, ladies and gentlemen. We'll throw in free movies and in-flight service to get them out of our country, no problems. So that's what I think. Get them out, mate. And the only party that seems to care about that is Pauline Hanson, and that's why her stocks are going through the roof. I mean, it's a terrible turn of events. It's a terrible tragedy for Australia. We'll probably have to do a second report on all this. But, that's kind of where we're at the moment, ladies and gentlemen. You've got the Muslims versus the Zionists, and, we Aussies, we real Aussies, we're caught in the middle of this shit fight, and we don't want to have anything to do with it, So as far as I'm concerned, if you want to be involved in this kind of thing, fuck off to Israel, fuck off to Palestine, fuck off to the Middle East. We don't need you here in this country, and we're not interested. We're not interested in this fight. We want no part of it. And I think people who are radicals on both sides should be encouraged to leave this country, because we want no part of it. And we shouldn't be funding it. We shouldn't be sending money to Palestine. We shouldn't be sending money to Israel. So it's just something we want out of. We want to decouple from all this. And as we all know, we love Pauline. She's been saying, go back to where you came from. And as a matter of fact, I'll drive you to the airport, and I'll also throw my keys into the carpool. I'll happily drive anyone to the airport who's thinking of leaving to go back to the Middle East or Israel. So very good. That's the report from Tiger Mountain for this week.